I was once a young, strapping lad. Like most kids growing up in my time, I was the proud owner of a DS. I had the DSi XL, so I could flex pretty hard, and I had my favorite game on the DS, of course. It was Plants vs. Zombies.
Oh my God! Yo! Look, I'm American.
Starting up the game on DS, you get the gameplay intro that just like gets me excited, hypes me up every single time I play the game. This is just one of the many things I love about Plants vs. Zombies. An introduction is in order. I'm Potbreakeer, and now I'm going to be using this channel to just talk about things that I love to talk about. Too often I find myself playing a game or watching a movie and having no one to talk to about it, so this is basically my diary. Anyway, let's get into the review. Plants vs. Zombies is no hidden gem or a diamond in the rough. The game released in 2009 and basically saved
Holy moly.
The success of this game cannot be understated. It released on many platforms such as the Xbox 360 and
Dude, so, are you ready for
Plants vs. Zombies, Android, iOS, Bada, and basically everything else out at the time. It saved my life. I own the Xbox version and the DS. Plants vs. Zombies has a really excellent sense of progression to it. At the beginning of the game, you start with one row and the only plant you have is pea shooters. But eventually you'll be up to 5 rows or sometimes 6, and there are 49 whole different plants for you to unlock. Out of the 49 plants, almost every one has its own use, but some are just simply outclassed by others. There's no debate about it. The repeater is better than the pea shooter in almost every way. So sometimes there's balancing issues between the plants, like the pumpkin is just the walnut, but way better. Oh, man. Also, along with the more plants that you get, there are also more zombies to be introduced, and there are 26 separate types of zombies, some of which are very unique. Admittedly, the game is a slow rise. It takes a while to get into the true meat and potatoes of what the game has to offer, but once you're there, the fun doesn't end, ever. Along with the drops from the zombies at the end of the level, you'll eventually get the key, which allows you to buy funny upgrades for your plants, or even a whole new plant in some cases. The Twiddly Dinky shop, owned by Crazy Dave, is very awesome. It allows you to buy the Gatling pea, which is the coolest fucking plant in the whole game. I love them. And along with the more plants that you get, the game gets harder as you go. It's never that difficult, but it increases at a rate that keeps you from being bored too much, but never gets unfairly difficult. Another point that helped Plants vs. Zombies become so successful, back in the time that it was released, this game was hilarious. And to me, that charm, that early, late 2000s charm that it has, it still holds up to me. Like, it's not ugly laugh funny, but it just has an old school comedy style that I love, you know, like Troll Face and X3 Potato type stuff. A lot of people maybe don't find this funny anymore, but me personally, I think it holds up. Shout out to the homie Crazy Dave. Another thing that really, I think maybe this is the best part of the game, is the magical moment in sonic symphonic sounds. The Plants vs. Zombies soundtrack. This soundtrack is one of those video game soundtracks that naturally means a lot to me because I have very nostalgic feelings toward it. Hearing these songs over and over again brings them back into my mind in a way that makes me really happy.
Thank you.
It was composed by Laura Shigihara. Of course, what you're hearing is the game. Another small detail that really hypes up every level of the game is whenever like the flag zombie comes up, the huge wave is coming or whatever, you can hear the drums start coming in the background. It really just changes things. You know, it's beyond amazing. Small things like that really add up to make an extremely enjoyable product. Also, the game has really like sound design. Things like hitting the Buckethead's bucket or the screen door zombies being hit, it creates like a nice tactile feel to the gameplay to make the whole loop more satisfying, you could say. Another point to touch on is something really enjoyable about the whole series really is the variation in gameplay that you get. Like, it comes with tower defense games. You're making your own strategies to stop the unearthly horde or whatever is coming after you. In this game you have 49 plants, as I said, and like you can do whatever you want with them really. There's a ton of strategies. There's plants made in this game just to have more strategies, like the garlic plant. I used to be like the kind of person to that had their plants symmetrically organized, but now I like to just kind of randomly place my plants around, kind of like the rustic look, you know. Hi, pea shooter. No, you had to I used to really obsess. I know you've obsessed over getting your plants looking perfect. The garden really matters. A lot of times you'll find yourself playing small mini games throughout the stages. There are 3 main ones to mention. There's walnut bowling, and there's whack-a-zombie, and there's the ultimate battle, which I wrote as spam placing fun one in these scripts. Walnut bowling is fine, the song is nice, but the game would be no different without it. It really doesn't change anything. It's like just a break, I guess. Whack-a-mole levels are simple. If the sun didn't drop from the zombies, it would be the worst one. But like just the option to place plants gives a lot of depth to the minigame, I guess you could say. However, you're only ever gonna buy the grave digger because the zombies would get just way too fast for the potato to make sense, and it's worthless when you can kill them in a fraction of a second if you're as cracked as me. In-game mode can be considered a boss round. It is really fun. Basically, the slider from Walnut Bowling is on the side, but with the plants gained from the previous 10 levels. No, there's no sun, there's no thinking, it's just fun. While you're doing this, it has one of the best songs in the game, of course. It's also what you do for the final boss of the game, which I will touch on in a bit. I think this is almost as fun as just the main level himself. It's just fun, that's all I can say about that. Other extra content includes achievement. They exist. Yeah. There are also many other things accessible from the main menu. There's the Zen Garden, where you can plant plants. There's also a tree you can grow, the wisdom tree or something. And there are puzzles and minigames. The puzzles section, it's really not puzzles, but they require a lot of strategy to win. Talk about Vasebreaker. Vasebreaker is really fun, but it is pretty challenging. If you can't just spam breaking all the vases or vases. And Zombotany, you're playing as, no, not Zombotany. In iZombie, you play as the zombies as if, you know, you just flipped the side, which has way more potential than it should, but there's not much of it, and I wish there was more. But they did it again in Garden Warfare, where you can play as the zombies. The DSiWare version of the game also had exclusive DS type minigames, like all the Mario games had on DS. It was stuff where you use the touch screen. Also, no. There's the entirety of survival mode, which is the real challenge of the game, because, as I said, the adventure mode, the main story, really isn't that hard. Survival mode, it's just basically surviving waves, and there's an endless survival mode, which is like the true meat and potatoes. You can bring whatever plants you want, and it just goes for as long as you can handle it, because sometimes when you're playing the main story, the levels just end too soon, you know? I feel like I don't get my garden the way I want it. Anyways, let's talk about adventure mode. You already know how it is. You've played this before. Everybody's played this. There's 50 stages. Every 5 stages is a minigame / ultimate battle or / boss. Every 10 stages you get to a new level area where there's a gimmick. The front yard stage are just so easy. They're just really easy. It acts as a buffer to get to the real shit. However, it is the only stage to not have a gimmick, which means sometimes I like to return to it after a while to get that classic gameplay. I give this area a 9 out of 10. Nighttime front yard, I like it enough, but it's not my favorite. It's basically the same as the daytime scene, but I find it to be a slog. In all the nighttime stages, you do not get sun from the sky, which has the effect of dramatically slowing down the game. So they try to fix this by having the mushrooms. There are free mushrooms, there's a cheap sun shroom, there's cheap not sun shrooms, but the problem here is that the free mushroom is unironically the best plant in the game. I don't like using it though, but you can just beat the entire of this whole 10 stages, the entirety of these 10 stages with nothing but the puff shroom, and like that says something really. The nighttime stages, however, introduce some really cool plants, such as the Doom Shroom, which is one of the better plants in the game, and the Ice Shroom. Also, the Newspaper Zombie is introduced here, and I find him really awesome. He stays up on recent events, you know. I maybe am ragging on these areas. I like that the nighttime stages are more strategic due to you having less sun if you don't just use puff shrooms, which I tried not to do. I did not just spam puff shrooms, okay? It's harder than the other stuff. I give this a 7 out of 10. Next up is the backyard, which has 6 rows. With the addition of water, you are going to be given the lily pad, which is a vital plant for this area. It's a platform in the water that most plants can be on, with the exception of things like potato mines and spikeweeds. Somehow a lily pad can hold up a fat ass walnut though. It doesn't really make sense to me, but anyways, there are some zombies that make these stages quite challenging, such as the dolphin rider, the bobsled, and the zombino or whatever. They will really fuck your shit up if you're not prepared. This is where I think the game picks up in difficulty, as you imagine. Oftentimes I find that there's a different strategy for everyone forming around this part of the game as well. I personally like using the 3-peater with torchwoods because they spam fucking balls. However, some prefer the repeater or snow pea fucking whatever you want to use, man. I think the backyard blends difficulty and gimmick to create the most interesting but approachable part of the game, and I find myself wanting to be there the most out of any other part. I give this a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. Next up, believe it or not, is the backyard again, but in nighttime. It's basically the same as the backyard, but the gimmick here, I'm saying that a lot, is having mist or fog, whatever. So maybe it's more of an early morning backyard. The fog covers up around 4 tiles, then 5, then 6, and you can't really see through it. It's 95% impossible to see through, and it's really hard for the first few moments of every level to know what you're doing, because you hear the zombie, you know the zombie's coming, but you won't know where he is until he steps out of the fog. I don't have much to say. I do think this section introduces the most interesting plants until the next area. And if you want to waste a slot, you can get rid of the mist with the plantain or the blover. These plants suck ass. Never uses them. This part introduces my 2 least favorite zombies. The straight jacket zombie, the psycho or whatever, and the balloon zombie. Just don't like them. And the cactus sucks too. I give this a 5 out of 10. This is the worst part of the game. It's like, I just don't want to be here. The last area is the roof. It makes the game more streamlined, I suppose, since you can't use a lot of the damaging plants that you had up till this point. You'll basically be reliant on 3 plants: the kernel pult, the cabbage pult, and then once you get the melon pult, that's all you're going to use up here in the roof, because you can't really use shit else unless you put it on the flat part of the roof due to the slope of your roof. The melon pult is awesome. This is the true final area. Like the ending zones of the first Portal game, if you ever played that, things feel a lot more intense here. However, that is only for the last 3 stages. To be honest, the roof section of the game is unbelievably easy. The pots add to this because they add as an extra defense to your plants. You can use it to stall the Gargantuar, which is what I did a lot. The imp is dumb though, he'll fuck you up sometimes. In general, I find the move to be somewhat anticlimactic, but a nice change of pace, and I think it's fun overall. I give it an 8 out of 10. The final boss battle is very interesting. I never really cared for it way back when. It was basically just another one of those boss rounds I spoke about before. Although this is considerably harder than those other ones due to his attacks. Dr. Zomboss has an ice ball attack that he rarely uses, a fireball, and Crazy Dave's van, I think. The 3 attacks can fuck you up, man. However, there are ways to fight them. Using the ice shroom to freeze the fireball, jalapeno to destroy the ice ball. The van will, there's no way against that. Also, the bungee zombies will steal some of your plants, and you have to worry about the goddamn pots. However, I really enjoy this boss battle. It is challenging a lot. It's not hard, but it is challenging enough to keep me stimulated, and the music is awesome, and it's like the spectacle of it all. It just feels nice. It feels right. It's not perfect or anything, but I think that it is well designed, and it should be praised for what it is. It's better than a lot of other tower defense boss battles. I have a bit of small grievances for this. First is the goddamn resolution. On the PC version, you're trapped at a measly low resolution. I'm sure you've noticed from my gameplay. It's very frustrating. Also, the aspect ratio. Both of these things I ignore because typically I play in windowed mode, but for the sake of recording, I don't want you guys to see my wallpaper here. In conclusion, I think this game was the best game that released in 2009. It is the game of the year. I have Game of the Year version of it. I absolutely adore this game. It was popular for a reason. I find almost every second to be enjoyable, even though some parts I like way more than others. If you haven't played this game, I strongly urge you to go play this, and you'll see why so many people love it. I'm sure you already have, though. And this is the part where I make up my own funny, quirky rating system. I'm gonna give Plants vs. Zombies a Gatling Peas 4-shot barrel, spitting out 4 bullets out of 4. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Tune in next week when I review Ryan Gosling.
Zombieがやってきた。ゾンビは